It's an incredible blessing. It's very wonderful. It's abundant love. It's lots of frustration. It's going through good times and bad times. It's worrying, and it's incredible. It's been a wonderful experience. I've gone through poverty, and yet always knowing that I'm greatly blessed. It's chaotic, it's creative, it's frustrating, it's fragmented, it's joyful, it's delightful. And if I had a choice of doing it again, I would do it again. Different. My first child was very extrovertish and outgoing. And I used to think when he was very little he had ESP, because if somebody called on the telephone, before I answered, he would say, "That's Nana," or "That's Aunt Linda," or "That's whoever it was, Uncle Kenny." He always knew who was about to call me. Another time when he was 3 years old, I was going down an exit from a church. It was up on a hill, and he said to me, as we proceeded downwards, he said, don't go any farther. It's going to be closed at the bottom. And it was. There was a great big thing across it. So when he was very little, he was kind of mental telepathic. Is that such a word? He had mental telepathy. A little bit of ESP. That was just the first one. The second one was Patrick, and he was very shy. And very artistic. He had the third eye. He could draw and imagine anything. And to this day, he's extremely artistic and more introverted than John, but very much perfectionist. He has to excel at everything. And when he was a little boy and he missed even one problem on math, he'd be very upset with himself. And do you want me to go through all 10 of them?
Sure.
The third one, as a little child, was Lisa, my first daughter, and she was always the second mother. The next sibling after her was just a year and a half younger than her, a little boy, and she would say, "Come on, Gecko, let's get you dressed," and she would take him into their room, and she would put dresses on him. She really was a little girl, and little sister, and then the fourth child came, and that was another boy. So this was one girl surrounded by 4 boys. So she came to me when she was about 4 years old with a big sharp knife and an orange, and she was crying. I said, "What's wrong?" And she said, "I can't get the seed out for Daddy to give you, so you can have a little sister, a little girl for me." So I told her, "Well, that's not the way to get a little girl." So anyway, I guess I explained the facts of life very early on to her, but I told her the best way to get a little sister is to go to church and pray for one, and that's what she did. And I not only gave her one sister, I gave her another 4. The fourth child was Michael, who was named after Michael the Archangel and St. Francis of Assisi, and it kind of reflects his personality. He's very outgoing, very assertive, can be very aggressive, but very lovable at the same time. And he gave me all the wrinkles that you see on my face and all my white hair, because he was a strong-willed child and very, very challenging. But he's wonderful, like the other 9. Next one was Kevin, and Kevin, the name Kevin means gentle, and he's actually a very gentle person. He was a very gentle baby, except for one day when he was about 2.5. He always was with his older brother, Michael, who I just talked about. They were a year and a half apart, and one day he had just come through this door right here that you're seeing, and Michael must have picked on him. Michael was in the kitchen, and I saw little Kevin putting his hands up like this, spotting Michael, and racing as fast as he could and shoving him down with all his might. And that was the only time I think I ever saw Kevin really out of control. But he is a teacher and he's an artist today. And he's about to have a second child. Next one after that is Chrissy. And she was my strong-willed daughter. Very shy, but at the same time, she excelled in art. So she overcame her shyness by becoming really excellent actress in high school. She starred in all the plays. She sang and she danced. But the problem is when it was time to come off the stage and all of us were waiting to give her flowers, she'd become her very shy little self again, and that was the part that she hated. She loved being on the stage and escaping into a different personality. And she's just become a mother recently. And she, like all the others, is very lovable. The next is Terry, who we always called our little entrepreneur because from a very early age, she was a little businesswoman. She's also kind of a Renaissance woman. She could dance and she could draw and she could make money. And her claim to fame as a little girl is she wanted a safe for Christmas, so I got her a steel safe. And she would rent out space in the safe to her brothers, and they would store all their stuff. She's a little Capricorn, very earthy, and she is today a fashion designer and a jewelry designer, and she's still making that money. The next person is my baby boy, Stephen, and he right now is teaching in Taiwan. He was always a very sweet, gentle child, except for the time when he was between 2 and 3 years old, and at that point he became a little baby crazy person. He would do all kinds of things. I would put my kids out in the backyard, and I'd be inside for maybe a minute, come out, and I couldn't find him, and I'd say, "Stevie, where are you?" And he'd climb up the top of a tree, and he'd say, "Here I am, Mommy." One day he decided he wanted to make hot dogs, so he got one of our little puppies and put it in the oven. Another time he wanted to explore to see if our portable phone floated, so he would put it in the toilet, and of course it sank, so we had to replace many portable phones. One day he decided he wanted to investigate, so this is when he was 2.5. He got a screwdriver and he jiggled the security door, and he got out, and the neighbor across the street called and said, "Ian, your little boy's escaping." He also got into our big 63 Green Machine, which was this great big old van, and somehow put it in reverse and sailed out into the street in this thing when he was 3. After that, he became a very shy, quiet, kind of perfect boy child. But he gave me also wrinkles when I was little. The next one is my little daughter, Care Bear, Carolyn Kachaki, number 9, and she has always been a very sweet, whimsical, like my fairy child. She, at a very young age, at 3 years old, almost 3, would remind me that life is not a race. When I was racing and rushing everybody around, she would say, "Mommy, life is not a race." And to this day, she's still very, very relaxed. She does not get upset about things. She's just very peaceful. And she's very talented as well. She's my other Renaissance woman. She can sing, and she can play the flute, play the guitar, and she's my little peacemaker. And she's probably the one that tries to take care of me the most and keep me on my diet. She's beautiful, and someday she's going to be a mother with 10 children, and we all call her Care Bear because she's just that. She's very tender-hearted, and she takes care of all of us. The next little one is number 10, Alley Cat, who was a 2-month preemie. She came 8 weeks early, And when she was born, she was 3 pounds 7 ounces and went down to 2 pounds, 2.5 pounds. She was in the hospital for 3 months. She was on life support for a week. She was on oxygen for 9 months. She had 12 transfusions. They didn't expect her to live, but she was extremely feisty. And she had this strong, indomitable spirit, and she still has that. We brought her home after 3 months, and like I said, she was on an oxygen tank until she was 9 months old. And she is, how can I describe Allie? Well, I call her my pillow. My other daughters, I call them my dollies, but this one's my pillow because she slept with me for 4 years, even through the earthquake, the big Northridge earthquake. And she is definitely the baby. And she's also, every one of these children are absolutely wonderful and loving, and all have wonderful hearts. John, Patrick, Lisa, Michael, Kevin, Chrissy. Did I say Lisa? Yes, I did. Is there anybody I left out? No. Then there's my 8,011,000th children. There's many kids that I have not given birth to, but they consider themselves the 11th child. And they all think they're next in line, and there's many of them. And they none of them realize that there's a whole bunch of other ones that think the same thing. But I'm very blessed with my 10 children, and I could go on and on and on. Each one is very unique and very special and very loving. They all have wonderful hearts. And that's a very quick summation. Well, I've been a parent for 43 years, and it's hard to remember before parenthood. But how it changed me, it made me very responsible. It made me very aware of there was a world outside myself. I think it made me a much more sensitive, giving person. I believe it made me much more spiritual because raising 10 children, I had to depend upon something other than myself, which was, of course, God. So I became much more of a faith-filled person. I tended not to worry about things like money, like other people, but I would worry about the kids' safety. So in some respects, I became more worried, more fearful, but over the years, that worry became replaced a lot with faith. How did it change me? I became very much into nature because I was able to see things through children's eyes. So I became filled with wonder and marvel like a child. And I've always been able to keep that with me because I see things through children's eyes. And now, of course, I'm a grandmother, so I see things through children's eyes again. So I think it changed me in that I was very aware of every little thing is important. Well, anytime any of them got very sick or were in danger or injured, I would say was the hardest moments. For example, when John, my oldest, was 2 years old, he fell into a swimming pool. And I had been at my uncle's house with my parents and my brother, and I had decided, I had John, who was 2, and Patrick, who was 2 months old, and I decided I was not going to go in the swimming pool at all because I was very aware of the danger of water. So for 6 hours I was watching them, and my parents finally convinced me, go in the water for a little while and relax. We will keep him right here with us. So I went into the water, and I was playing with my cousin, and all of a sudden I had this awareness, and I feel it was God speaking to me, saying, find John, something has happened to John. So I started screaming, where's John? And I remember seeing my father, his face looking, and all of a sudden him turning white, and John was under, he was face down in a little spa adjacent to the pool, and we didn't know whether he was dead or alive. He was not breathing, so he had to have mouth-to-mouth resuscitation, and he was fine. But that was probably the most, what was the question? The hardest, most difficult moment of my life, because I really felt that I was going to lose him. Other times that were difficult were when just little things like I could never ever catch up with the laundry, or there were times when we just did not have enough money to get by, but then I received many miracles along the way that helped me get through all of that. But we were, overall, even though it was difficult, I have many children that were very close in age. For example, when I had a 9-year-old and a 7-year-old, I had 4 younger children, all under 5, and that was difficult. Yes, I would. Certain children of mine I would be more strict with and more demanding of. I would probably try very hard to get organized at a much younger age. I would try to, as a parent, make sure that all of them continued their religious education. As each child came, I had less time to take them, like the church school, so I think I would do that differently. But I would try to find systems, I think, to keep us more organized. I have no regrets in terms of loving them and showing them my love, but I would try to probably become a better cook and teach them all to cook. And I'm trying to think what the question was. What would I do differently? I think I would get rid of excess things. Having 10 children and it being, may not seem like much, but here in this country, even at my age, my generation, people at that point were having maybe 2 or 3, and I had 10. So we were in a very different financial situation than everybody else. So like at church, people would give us things, things that they were going to give away, clothing and things. So I tended to keep everything that was given, and that we ran out of room right away. So I would do that type of thing differently. I have a story for each child. Yes, I do. I have probably one of my most favorite stories involves a miracle. And this is when I was pregnant with my 7th child, Terry, and we were extremely poor. My husband was in business for himself, and I was working very little. I'm a teacher at that time because I had to stay home with the children. And since my husband was self-employed, sometimes he would get paid on time and sometimes he would not. So this was about 2 weeks before Christmas. And we were very poor, and I was very concerned about having Santa Claus come, because despite the fact that we were pretty poor, with the kids growing up, I would always make certain that I would take extra teaching jobs around their birthdays or Christmases, so they would have really wonderful Christmases with lots of wonderful little presents, and also that at each birthday they felt they were very special, and I tried to, shower them with lots of kind of family all around and make it a very special day. But this one Christmas, it didn't look like that was going to happen because we were very short of money. So I took all the kids to church one day. We went to Mass, and I asked them, I said, we have to go to church. And it was not on a Sunday, it was like on a Monday. I said, I'm going to take you to church because we're going to pray to Jesus that he will give us the money we need to, have a good Christmas, pay our bills. And so I took them, and they were all praying, "Dear Jesus, please take care of us. Please give us the money we need." So after church, they had just, probably before we got to church, somebody had brought in a great big Christmas tree. And it was not decorated or adorned, but it was probably all the way to the ceiling. So maybe it was like a 30-foot tree. And it was flocked with snow, so that when you looked at it, it was kind of green with a lot of white. And this is important to think of that, visualize it. So my son Patrick was a little skinny 11-year-old at the time. After church, when everybody left, it was still us praying, "Dear Jesus, please give us money." My son Patrick says, "Mommy, can I go up and look at the Christmas tree?" I said, "Yes, you can." So he goes up, and he's there, and the rest are in the pew. He comes running back, and he says, "God answered our prayers." I said, "What do you mean?" And he said, "Well, I just found money in the Christmas tree." And so the rest of the kids said, "What are you talking about?" Because he was our family he was always the teaser. He said, "I just found $100 in the Christmas tree." And so John, the older brother, said, "Yeah, Pat, where is it? If you found $100 in the Christmas tree, where is it?" And he says, "Well, it didn't have our name on it, so I put it back." So, of course, all the kids said, "Pat, are you kidding?" So they asked me if they could go, and I was very, very curious myself. So we all went up, and I said, "Okay, where is it?" And I remember him putting his little skinny, bony hand way into this Christmas tree, and then pulling it out, and there was a brand new $100 bill. And all the kids went, "Oh, Jesus answered our prayer." And I thought, oh my gosh, what are we going to do? Pat's right, it doesn't have our name on it. And at that time, of course, I believed that it was from God, because I had brought my kids there to pray, and I really believe in the power of prayer, especially with children. But I was concerned about leaving it there, because I knew that soon, the next week, they would be coming in and decorating it with all kinds of ornaments and holly and, all the things that you put on a Christmas tree. And then eventually they would take it out and throw it out. And I thought, oh, that $100 bill is going to be lost. So I told my kids, I said, we better take it to the priest. We better take it to the pastor and give it to him. But I kept thinking, he will be so impressed that we're being honest and giving it to him. He'll give it right back to us. Do you remember this, Joe? So I took my 6 or 7 little kids at the time with me back to the rectory where the priest is and I said, knocked on the door and said, "Father, I'd like to give you something." And I explained. I did not explain that I'd taken my children to pray for money. I just explained that my child, Patrick, had found this $100 bill in the Christmas tree, and all the priest could say was, "Who would be so crazy as to put a $100 bill in the Christmas tree? That's just nonsense. That's craziness." And all he talked about is how it was so crazy, never thinking to say, "Why, little boy, that's amazing that you were so honest that you gave it back. And it must be meant for you. You're a big family. You probably need the money. Here, take it." He didn't say any of that. Instead, he said, "What crazy person? Who would do that? Okay." And then he kind of said goodbye, and we all went. And as soon as we got out of the door, every one of the kids started to cry, including myself. And they said, "Mommy, you brought us to church. We prayed for money. God gave us money immediately. Why didn't you keep it?" And I thought, why didn't I keep it? Oh, I can't believe it. So, but I had to encourage them. So I said, well, you know what? We did what I thought was the right thing. If it's meant to be, we will find 7 times that amount of money. It'll come to us. And sure enough, it did. Within 2 weeks, we ended up getting close to $2,000. Somebody who owed my husband a lot of money paid him. We went to the horse races after Christmas. And I had the kids pray for a long shot. I won $200 on a $2 bet. All kinds of crazy things happened, and we got much more than that $100 bill. Fast forward at 15, 16 years later, when my older kids are in confirmation class. That priest, by the way, went away, and I saw him 15 years later. And I had always said, if I ever see this priest, I'm going to tell him the real story. And I went up to him and said, "You probably don't remember this," and I explained it all. And I said, "I didn't have the courage to tell you at the time that I brought my children to church to pray for it, and we were instantly, our prayers were granted. I said, instead I gave it to you, and I explained, and he said, oh my God, I am so sorry I did that. I'm so excited to hear this story. Thank you for telling me I needed to hear this. Then I saw him 2 weeks later. By the way, he had transferred to another church and came back to another confirmation class, and he said, I told that story at church, and it made such an amazing difference to my parishioners. It helped so many people realizing the miracles. So it was a wonderful, it's just one of many little miracles that we received when my kids were growing up. And that's a favorite story of mine, because I can think to this day, I recall my children's very, very excited faces and my excitement. The only thing I regret is my 4 younger children did not experience that, but they've heard the story many, many times. Well, the most important thing to me is that they're good-hearted, happy people. I don't care so much about whether they are ever wealthy, but I just want them to find, each one of them, in their own lives, mutual love, and if possible to have jobs where they can provide for themselves. One of the most important is that they're good people, loving people with generous hearts, and that they're happy, that they're always close to one another, and that they live long, productive lives. Those are my dreams for them.